give a short and brief speech about our environmental advocacy and the environmental sustainability issues that we are pressing towards. Mainly, I will speak about a public speaker who has had an impact and influence toward having issues that may be linked and interchanged to one another receive more attention and has been able to found grassroots uh, movements, activists, and his name is Lester Brown. He is an environmental advocate. He has been able to attempt to mobilize uh, economies, people that have interests as far as economic sustainability crises that can impact us due to a variety of issues. Mainly, I began in looking over the strengths that we have on the amount of economic resource and current economic sustainability practice that indicates that we may, as a people in this world, have population constraint on issues that involve our economic security, and that as a country is outlined between several issues. Mainly, they combine to balance one another. The issues that begin with climate change can impact, say, the development of a world, the development of a um, economic society. For instance, while some countries begin trying to establish um, food production and that there may be um, other issues in demand for that country, what overlies it is that there may be pressures on their agricultural system. So, looking at one area to say that economically we try and harvest crops or that we try to have a greater um, availability, say, of our resource that we in turn can exhaust the climate or that we in turn exhaust natural resource. It comes to the attention of how many people in the world are reliant on such resource, such as water, for instance, or that with climate change that there could be the erodibility, and with erosion there could be economic impacts, such as one that came to mind, which is that there was a heat wave over 5 years ago, and there was like an economical collapse in Russia. Such events say that our practices could lead to suggest climate loss, and that the climate system that we are so used to trying to depend on and necessarily uh, possess towards raising a food chain, for instance. Um, one other one other area that I could see is how crops that we grow require such resource of water, or that with a depletion in water that cannot be replaced naturally, and a shift in climate, that there seems to be a adverse change with the environment in which we are able, and I don't quote what Mr. Brown would be able to say are our population issues. Mr. Brown has been able there to receive a lot of attention in publishing in series to mobilization and towards the very issues that are more pressing and pending on understanding and interpretation, that there could be activity, or that there seems to be a pressing consensus to understand the very very types of problems that we are going to have to experience rather than think that we come up with alternate sustainable practices to have in order for us to limit the sort of change which we are underestimating by any less means. Be it that there could be factors of income, be it that there are international world demand issues, and the very kinds of sustainability that can lead to failing states. The idea would be that every country at times needs to have resources made more available either by grassroots establishment and an interpretation of a more viability rather than for energy resources to encompass a greater form of environmental sustainability. And I think that no other person has had such a better understanding that could be more recognized either through institution and also that we ourselves can engage the very nature to have such resource and understanding about how to deal with these kinds of constraints because we have to. And I would likely and more than appreciably note it is no simple task, and in spite of uh, the very spectrum between how these issues can balance one another, where your understanding or mine seems more in in response to this kind of uh, attempt or an approach, such as with environmental advocacy, as Lester Brown has had to either speak before schools and raise questions before audiences that are more pertinent and that they pertain to a general interest abroad. Because when we try and approach this to address it, mainly you have you have to wonder where countries don't raise issues and where the economic security falls into a personal, say, entrepreneurial or more independent, privatized approach, so that people that want to have or are able themselves to pursue financial income. And well, the greater a person's interest becomes, and the more affluent that we try to be in this kind of area, we wonder ourselves how limited um, and on a on a less biased basis could we have a, I guess, a focused involvement that importantly um, addresses such things, because we can't look at the climate systemically and think that, well, just because fuel production and the amount of resource that is rampant on placing water stresses and constraints on our water supplies, because plants need more water depending on their crop variety to grow more than others, that we should switch, or that how much water do we use in order to raise our livestock, and how much per person do we consume that depends viably on an economic quote of what we're doing and where we're going with any of it. At times it is informational. It is more than something worthwhile to look at, and I would even thank you or thank Mr. Brown in order to portray a more sensibility of where we are in this position, and actually having the interest to acknowledge it, so that either you or I or anyone for that matter uh, could 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 gain comprehension. Um, when our interests depend on learning about such issues that we feel believe in it and saying we have I'm short on the word, but we have to be expedient in what we're trying to do. And I see that we're not going individually to be able to ask our own questions to be addressed in certain ways. And I commend Lester Brown on being able to, at least for anyone that may look at such issues as yourself or I would, that well, that we place economic security aside from environmental sustainability crises and try to adopt or adapt to safer practices, and we in that process may try and progress towards alternative sustainability measures. Okay. Well, this we're going to conclude the speech. Guys, thank you for showing up.
You speak better than Donald Trump. Believe me.